This is it. We're
What's up,
doing
Mike?
it.
Epic.
I'm so excited to be here on Fleets. What a joy. Spaces.
Yeah. I was
What
just
a
telling
treat.
Spike how this has become way more enjoyable for me by the fact that you are really annoyed that we're doing this. So yeah.
That's
For
good.
the same reason that most people vote for Trump is the same reason why I'm enjoying your
That's
pain.
fair. That's fair. I think other former Sixers GMs have annoyed me for different reasons, and this is a fun new tack.
Well,
Dude, yes,
Mike, you missed Daryl. Like you just came in as Daryl was saying that you actually do sound high on the podcast.
You not only sound high, you look high on the.
Daryl, please don't tell me you watch the YouTube.
Well, I like doing the YouTube because I can put it in the background while I sort of half listen to it. So yeah. And I don't listen to it, by the way, on 7X or whatever the hell Sam used to say he would do. Totally ridiculous.
He said that. Sam said that he listened to things, I think, on 3 or 4X, and whatever we did, whatever it was at the radio station, I tried it on Audible.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
It's impossible. Yeah.
No, I think Sam also said he listened to it backwards, or like.
Well, he watches games backwards.
Yeah. He's like,
normal
why do we watch things forward? Why don't we watch them backwards? I'm like, what are you? Half of the time when Sam gives an interview, I'm like, what are you talking about, Sam? That makes no sense.
I do appreciate a guy asking questions, but some questions don't need to be asked, I would say.
Yeah, like why do we watch games forward?
I listen to the Chipmunks at 0.5x.
That's smart.
So,
all right, so I do now have to explain.
Yeah,
Can I explain how we got here? I have to explain how we got here. All right.
Please.
So Hugh and I are longtime friends. Hugh Howey, that some folks on here may know, best-selling author of Wool and like 1,000 other novels because he's like Stephen King and he has like a new novel every 3 weeks or something. And he and I are longtime friends, and we just like doing fun stuff together, and so we had scheduled to do a 30-minute, let's just chat with interesting people because otherwise we wouldn't have an excuse to get together with them. Like, for example, last week Hugh had on Stuart Brand, who is reanimating woolly mammoths. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it was really interesting. So, and then we had we had who else did we have?
Kevin Kelly on, I think, the week before that.
Kevin Kelly. We had Deepak, who's like wrote a book about aliens. So this is a huge step down this week.
It's a week off. It's a week off.
Yeah, but and then we were doing it on Clubhouse, and then we were like annoyed that Clubhouse is only Apple, and I hate Apple. So I was like, oh, we'll try this Spaces thing. And then I was like, let's kill 2 stones with 1 bird because you guys wanted to chat about 3-pointers. So like, here we are. And he was a big NBA fan, so he can hang on NBA as well. So that's how we got here. Hello, everyone who's tuned in.
That's very exciting.
Hugh, I was looking at Daryl's right. You've written so many books. It seems almost insane. I can't even imagine writing one whole book. I can't even, I guess, comprehend how you would find the time to write like that. Does your brain just never stop producing stories?
To be fair, I don't know how you write a book either. I'm writing a sequel to one of my books now, and every time I write a book, I'm like, how did I do the last one? It feels because you only remember the last process where you were kind of revising a book that was almost perfect and just looking for wayward commas, and then you start with a blank document, and you're like, what? How did I get to that easy part? And so it's a struggle for me every time.
You would love Hugh. He used to drive yachts around, like rich people on yachts, and then he circumnavigated the globe basically by himself in a catamaran. Yeah, he makes me feel boring. I feel boring when I'm around Hugh.
What?
So.
You're right. You do Broadway shows, man. Nothing's more exciting than that.
Yeah, I annoy the 76ers fan base with my musical enjoyment. So it's great.
I think
Yeah.
there's more crossover than from musicals to Sixers fandom than you're giving it credit, I would say.
I agree.
I hope that's true because musicals are awesome, and yeah. So why
Before
don't we
we,
bang out? Look, let's just say this: I'm happy to talk 3-pointers. I'm also happy to talk anything Sixers. And Hugh watches every Sixers game. In fact, he was at the game 2 nights ago. He was at the win. When we beat the Knicks, right? Yeah, the Knicks. And so yeah, we can talk Sixers all night. He becomes he's from Charlotte, so he didn't have a team growing up. So, or Charlotte, am I right? North Carolina?
Yeah,
I forget
we had
your city, Hugh, but it's like around Charlotte,
the
right?
first 3 years of the Hornets. We had season tickets. Felt like I no longer had a
Right,
basketball
right.
team.
So he doesn't really have a team. He just
Work for Daryl.
My favorite thing is Hugh's my friend, and he's the harshest on the Sixers of anyone. He'll just be like, "Well, these guys clearly just are horrible tonight, and you made a horrible trade." So I love that about Hugh. It's great for my
you
friends.
need friends in your life who can tell you when you've
Yeah.
when you've done things horribly wrong.
I
think.
thought that was your role, Spike. I thought you
Yeah.
that was your job.
Not yet, not yet. Just beware. That's
It's
what I.
coming. It's
Yeah, that's
coming.
what I used to
Everybody
tell.
gets a year grace period, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
Well,
surprised we get a year. No, I think it's a few more days, and then when unfortunately no team wants to trade with a team that's trying to win the title, the entire city everything will get burned to the ground. It's
don't make excuses, but don't do the pre excuse trade deadline. We can't have any of that.
let's
That
talk
nobody
about
wants.
three. Let's talk about 3-pointers.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about 3-pointers real quick because Mike and I we had never discussed it before, though it seems like it has become a conversation topic in among NBA circles. We got an email for somebody asking us what we thought the NBA would look like currently if the 3-point line was just erased. Now, obviously, there used to not be a 3-point line, but there's a lot more information now than there was,
Mm-hmm.
40 years ago. So what is your best guess if it went away tomorrow? How would teams play? Like how would teams adjust to that?
Yeah, I can guess this pretty well. I think it would look a lot like so it looked like the 90s, except teams would know they need to be out in transition, right? Half court defenses are too good. You wouldn't get the very slow it down like 90s basketball. You'd basically get the 80s, but with very good half court defenses, which would require teams to be out in transition at a very high rate to win. But a lot of the half court offenses would look pretty similar to what you see now. I mean, double drags and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
One thing we mentioned is that the big difference between the 80s and now is that even though the 3-point line would go away, that there are players that are much more proficient from shooting out there than
Correct.
ever were before. So, like, what if any effect would that have on it? Would the half court offenses just be a little less sludgy than they were in the 90s? Do you think, or because they're able to shoot from out there?
Shooting in general has improved. Like unguarded
Yeah.
shooting has improved. You can look at free throw percentage trends. You can look at everything. I would say, yeah, there'd be more of an acknowledgement. People would protect the rim even more fervor because people would know the efficiency of those shots and getting fouled and frankly, the number of jump shots in the NBA has stayed pretty stable throughout the years. What's happened is all the shots from 5 to 24 feet have all gone past 24 feet. I mean, that's really all that's happened. But the number of jump shots has been pretty stable over the years. So
Do you think that there would be as much scrambling to prevent, elite shooters from getting off shots in that range if they know that it only counts for two? Like would, guys
yeah.
like Steph and Joe Harris and JJ and those kind of things, you think you would be like following them as much as like staying attached?
No, there'd be
towards them?
less. There'd be less scrambling. Like I think last game, it was either the Knicks game or last night. Seth ran a pick and roll with Ben was the screener. It wasn't even a pick and roll. It was just like Ben screened for Seth, and they both stayed on Seth, and Seth dumped it to Ben, who then got either a rim shot or a dunk. I can't remember. Yeah, you probably wouldn't see that. You wouldn't see that. I mean, yeah, the danger is much lower than a. I mean, a 3-pointer is such a devastating shot, especially if it's a high percentage shooter. That I mean, people used to be behind our star in Houston, like literally play behind him. I mean, it's insane.
So, why do you think the conversation, is it just that people are bored now, or why do you think the conversation is basically that it has that advantage, the sort of the fact that we all found out that 3 was too much more than 2, and the shot became too much of an advantage, has made the game less aesthetically pleasing because too many teams hunt 3s too much. So A, do you agree? And then B, why do you think that the conversation has happened now?
I don't think it's less aesthetically pleasing, but I think as someone who's really into just games and winning in general, and Hugh, by the way, is huge into board games as well. There you can just tell a well structured game, and when you can tell a game that's not well structured, it's when there's only like one path to victory. Everyone
Right.
knows it. And we're getting there in the NBA. Obviously, the Sixers, because we have 2 of the elite, out of maybe like 7 in the NBA, people inside the 3-point arc. It for sure, if you have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and even Tobias, who's an elite, sort of the 15-foot and in player, you can still win that way, but it's just so rare. There's so many more people who can shoot threes wide open than there are who can be efficient, 15 feet and in. So it does, like, over time, because it's just too big of a bonus, right? You wanted the 3-pointer so people would have to space the floor and you get more dynamic play, which has worked. But they just gave it too much. It should be 2.5. I mean, that's really
Daryl,
bottom line.
what if they cut off the 3-pointer so you didn't have the corner 3, so the 3-point line naturally extended to the baseline?
I expect that to happen.
Really?
To happen.
Because it's too close. It's just like such that shot seems to be like worth. You've probably done the math, but it seems to be worth like 10% more than a 3 anywhere else on the court.
Yeah, it's like a corner 3 is basically the same as getting a rim shot, a medium guarded rim shot, which is sort of insane when you factor in fouls and everything else. So it's just too big of a positive. I mean, I would be fine if we could reconstruct arenas, having the court be wider, push the line back, and keep the corner 3.
I love that idea.
Well, you'd have to change out arenas, and no one's gonna.
But
it would take
that's
like
a lot of space
25
to cover
years
for the defense. Like, being able to dive in and get out on guys in the corner would be taxing. What?
Well, I like the teams could have they could choose the length of their line, and they could choose their court architecture.
Oh, so it's like baseball.
Some sports.
Different.
Yeah, and you could have behind. So if you wanted a lacrosse type structure, you could have that. You could have the line at 18 feet if you wanted it. I mean, I just think it would make it more interesting.
That'd be very cool
if you had that.
That's interesting. I think then, if that's the case, you should be allowed to go into the crowd and shoot from like someone's seat.
For sure.
And then should be allowed to defend it.
But
Lillard would do that.
You would also.
I think that would be awesome. Actually,
it'd be great for different personnel too, because if you had a team like the Sixers where outside shooting wasn't your bag, you could structure your home court to be an advantage for your personnel.
It's an 18-foot court.
Well,
everyone has to stand very close together,
and it would hurt the guys who are visiting.
Wait a
Home
minute.
court advantage.
As long as Danny Green is a Sixer, I want corner threes to exist. Let me just get that out there as Danny's biggest support.
Wait a
Home
minute.
court advantage.
As long as Danny Green is a Sixer, I want corner threes to exist. Let me just get that out there as Danny's biggest supporter, I think. Well, what do you? We had an emailer that, and obviously this screws up every record in NBA history. But it's amazing though, because it just seems like it would fix the problem if you made 3s 4 and 2s 3s.
Yeah, that works. That's pretty good. That's actually better than 2.5 and 2, I think, if you look at the math. But it's just too. It's a little. Yeah, it just seems a little too radical to do that. Yeah, because it would mess with the history. Yeah. The shooting from the stands, not too radical, but 4 and 3, too radical.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
one way to handle that is you score it like that to determine the winner of the game, but then you adjust the individual scoring of the game back to historical standards for stat keeping purposes. So you get
Yeah, you could do that. I like things like half court shots, just chop the other lead in half. Like
Oh wow.
You just want to get rock and jump.
that's cool.
That's definitely
well,
rock
no,
and
because
jump.
that's like 4-pointers. But to me, like what you want close games at the end. So like a lot of NBA games are, and then you definitely want the element, or you could just adopt the element ending, which allows anyone to come back because there's no clock, which I like. The only of all the crazy things I've said, the only one I probably wouldn't do is shooting from the stands because you got some practical stuff of.
All right, well that feels targeted. How do you feel about the transition threes? Obviously, in the flow of the game, I think are good and helpful and statistically sound. But the thing that frustrates me, and as I'm, I guess, getting into my old age, are 3-on-1 transition threes when a dunk is so easily accessible versus a racing out to a three and taking maybe not even a feet set three from there. How do you feel about those?
Yeah, definitely sounding gold there. Mike D'Antoni was the first team to do those, and look, I mean, it's a trade-off. Like if a team actually thinks that running for a three is better than running for a dunk, like why wouldn't we want them to do that? Like it's more of a failure that it's worth too much.
With a 3-on-1, I get that rebound anyway.
Yeah, you have an extra rebounder, but actually transition threes with there's a whole bunch of misnomers about threes among people who've watched basketball for a long time. One of them, there's a couple of them. One is there's longer rebounds. There aren't. I mean, you have rebounds that are longer, but they're on average they're about the same as like any 18-footer. The other misnomer is that you need a rebounder to make it an efficient shot. That's not true. I mean, there's just there's a whole set of reasons why people hate threes that have just been narratives built up since coaches hate threes from the 70s.
Well, I definitely don't hate threes. I like them and think the Philadelphia 76ers basketball team should shoot more of them. I just think that in the sense of 3-on-1, you work hard to get a deflection, you're going the other way, and there's a deflating feeling
right
when you have an open look and you decide I'm gonna do a little sidestep three with people bearing down on me there. It just feels like that's a momentum swing. I know that's kind of unquantifiable, but
it's in your control. So when you guest coach the Blue Coats next year, you can tell them not to do that. Yeah,
that's fair.
We did bang the gong once at the Blue Coats.
Oh, did you really?
It's not a gong.
Well, was it a bell?
The Liberty Bell.
It's a drum.
It's a bell. Yeah, it's a bell.
No, at the Blue Coats game, it's a drum.
It's a drum. It's a drum.
Okay.
That's what it was.
I'm surprised you came. I would have assumed they were doing that to kidnap you, to take you out or something.
No,
I would have thought it was a trap. Yeah, you guys fell for it.
There were like 2,500 people there. It was incredible. It was like it was a momentous occasion at the Blue Coats.
Just doubled the population of Delaware just by us showing up.
The championship runner-up Blue Coats. Let's not forget.
Right. We love our Blue Coats.
Yeah.
I have two stat questions for you, or one less stat, but one stat, one numbers, but not stat. I remember you saying, I don't remember where it was, that if your team has a 5% chance of winning the championship there that year, you have to go for it. Did you say something of those
I did, yeah,
to that effect?
yeah. That was
Do
just
you?
like that's called a heuristic. Without there's not a lot of science behind that, but yeah,
Okay, so that was my question. If you had a championship, because all I do is I look at Vegas odds, which aren't really you know,
Vegas odds are pretty good if you adjust for the vig and the fact that it's like one of the worst bets. You have to adjust for all that, but once you do, they're not bad. They give you a good measure.
so it,
We're a little above 5 right now at
yeah, you're
most.
about 7 for
No,
Vegas. Yeah.
7 is pre-adjusted. If you adjust correctly, we're close to
Uh,
5. Unfortunately, yeah.
so
I
you
hate
just
to say
meant
it.
gut. You don't have like a championship machine that tells you how likely it is
No.
for your team to win the
Well,
championship.
yeah, I think about this a lot, as you might guess, since probably as much as you do about podcasting and how it sucks to be on Spaces
Yeah.
right now. But
Don't worry, I'm recording it. It'll be on a podcast at some point.
perfect. All right,
Yeah.
as long as you can get the dog poop thing or whatever it is on there and the insurance place, let's
Yeah.
make sure to
Yeah.
make sure to drop in the plug right here. We'll pause right here
Right. Okay. All
before
right.
this terrible answer. Um, yeah. So look, in theory, like, look, if you're just saying, look, the goal is just to win the title. That's literally the only goal. It turns out to really mess up the math, right? Like you start to look at only championship teams, which have a big skew to them. Like you can't just look at championship teams if you're trying to model how to be a championship team. There's just not enough data and whatever. So generally, I try to model after conference final team, and then I do some adjustment for West and East. And if you look at that, and you have to set some sort of bar, which is like we have enough of a chance to go for it, because you want to have a cycle where if you just stay steady state all the time, you're not actually optimizing your title odds. You should push chips in as you're closer, and then you should do the there's a team that was pretty famous that did this, losing on purpose thing, that then got a bunch of superstars in some city nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And you should do that at those other periods. So, you have to set a heuristic on it, and 5 works pretty good. Usually there's about 5 or somewhere between 4 and 6 teams a year that have a 5% chance to win it or not. And then it's a pretty steep drop off. Once you get past that, after 5%, usually the next highest team is like at 1-ish%. So it's a natural cutoff if you look at the data. I don't know, that was too long of an answer.
No,
Have
no,
there
no.
been
It's okay.
times have there been times when in your career when you felt like you were lying to yourself that you are one of those teams that are
100%.
possible? You did.
1,000%. Yeah, I could convince, like the Yao Ming McGrady years, because we were dealing with 2 guys who had Tracy was a little bit later in his career, and Yao Ming was pretty injury prone. And I feel like we told ourselves stories like we're close, and we did get very close in 09. I think if we were healthy, we had above 10% odds to win that year, and we took the Lakers to 7 games without Yao and Tracy. But I do. Yeah, you if you don't look at outside objective things, your natural tendency is to tell yourself a story, which is like, if this happens, if you have like more than 3 or 4 ifs that have to go right for you to win the title, you're probably just making shit up for
How
yourself.
many ifs are we at this season?
If Joel is healthy is one of our ifs.
Yeah.
There's I don't want to say there's some other ifs. Yeah.
The okay, other stat question. Is there
Mhm.
any value? Do you find any value in any of the individual advanced defensive metrics that people currently have access to, like defensive box plus minus, defensive RPM, like all of those numbers of defensive win shares, or do any of those mean anything to you?
Those are pretty bad. Those are really bad,
Okay.
actually. I would say public domain all-in-one defensive measures are all really bad. I think internally several teams have some pretty okay ones, like not good. Like defense is hard to measure because look, like you're on the floor, you're playing defense, right? And you you're following the like a guy, like let's take the guy's out of position, it looks like his guy drives straight to the hoop. Well, he may have been told to hedge, right? Like
Right.
It's so dependent on what the coach wants them to do. Bigs are a little bit easier to judge defensively than non-bigs because bigs drive a lot of defensive value in their ability to both make paint shots harder and discourage paint shots, and then finish it off with the defensive rebound. That turns out to be the most measurable part of defense. The rest of it is, I mean, it's extremely hard. Yeah. So I don't know if that helped at all.
No, it does. Because there's so many of them, and I like my rule. It's funny that we were such big Sam guys, right, and so
Mm-hmm.
supportive. And I've come to a place where with basketball where I've come almost 180, where I just feel like I can watch and tell if the player is good enough, and all of these numbers that at least the public numbers that I felt like we had all this access to now honestly seem to. There's always so many people that rank high in those numbers that don't make any sense to me that I just stop looking at them. And I just sort of watch, and I feel like I get a better sense that way. And I was just curious. A lot of people quote those stats, and I was curious if you ever found any value in them.
The wisdom of the crowd is pretty good. Like if we could take every person, and many of them are on this spaces. Thanks again for tuning in. And just have them rank the defenders from 1 to 440 in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just average that, you'd come out pretty good. Like if you take, like, because the errors cancel. It's the same as like if you ask your entire classroom to judge how many jelly beans are in a jar, it turns out they get pretty good on average, but each person is terrible. So it turns out that wisdom of that crowd is actually pretty good. So I would encourage you though, Spike, if you want to be a GM, don't do what like a really famous person did at the All-Star, like on an All-Star panel once. They were asking, he wanted to be a GM, and they said like, what do you think it'll take for you to be a GM? And he's like, it's not hard. I can tell if a player's good in like 10 seconds. That's what I could just look at him and like know immediately. So I mean, but you're saying something different. Like so you watch a lot of basketball, you get a good sense of who's better and worse.
Isn't All-Star,
maybe not
All-Star voting the wisdom of the crowds, and it seems like they get it wrong a lot.
I mean, well, the starters are just like a pure popularity thing, so that I would agree with. The coaches thing isn't horrible, but there's a lot of politics to the coaches' vote. They're all lobbying for each other and all that kind of stuff. So I would agree with you, Hugh, at a high level.
Tobias Harris, as he would tell, as he told us live during the next game, is definitely an all-star, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, we were the best team in the East, and often that team gets 3. So, I think, yeah. I mean, honestly, they should have more all-stars. Like, they cut it off way less than most other sports as well. So.
My idea is we should have the number of all-stars should be fluid with the number of players that are deserving. So,
like the Oscars. Like the Oscars. That's good.
Yeah. There should just be like a scoring system, and we should decide what an all-star score is. And when those players are scored to an all-star score, they should be all-stars.
It's like the Hall of Fame.
And that's it.
And there should be a panel of 1, and you decide it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. Well, it could be all the coaches. If we could do the same thing, except they're just not voting in or out. They're giving them a score, like an all-star score. There are some years, this year it seemed like there weren't enough spaces. But I remember years ago when we had, Drew, who's great now, but when Drew made the all-star team here, or when Iguodala made the all-star team here, you could tell they were stretching a little bit.
Jamal, I think Jamal McGlure made it once.
That's how Baseball Hall of Fame voting works. Everyone votes to whether or not you deserve to be on a ballot. Then you get over a certain number and you make it. And some years it's none.
Agree.
Some years it's 5. That'd be amazing. There's so many people who deserve every year. There's a couple of guys who deserve to be on an all-star team that don't make it, and that would solve that problem.
And then the Veterans Committee could put Vince Carter in, when he's 42.
Right.
It'd be good. It'd be good. So
I feel like there's a limit on the questions I'm allowed to ask Daryl on on this platform.
You
So I'm gonna.
just ask,
No,
Michael. The worst
We
thing
got
that happens
look.
is I don't
I'm.
answer. You know?
I don't like the don't answer. I don't like that. I want hard hitting questions on our own platform, on our own home turf. So I will direct this question to Hugh and ask him
I like it.
if this is Daryl's best team that he's ever had, or if Daryl is lying to himself.
I don't think this is the best team he's ever had. I think a year going up against. Getting the top seed West with the Rockets, with the Warriors in the same conference was impressive. And that year, barring injury, they would have won it all. And there was some dominant stretches there where they were winning every game by 30 points. But I think if this team was healthy and with COVID has taken some guys out, like Seth just hasn't been the same since he sat out, and people have been missing a lot of games. I think if everyone was healthy and playing flat out, this Joel is the most dominant single force that I've seen outside of Harden that Daryl's ever had. So it's kind of strange how many similarities there are to this situation to what he had in Houston, where you have to just figure out how to maximize a truly dominant force that no one else can guard. And those two players are completely different, but the situation personnel wise seems to have some of the same challenges that he's had before.
We can take questions on here. This would distinguish it from a podcast if you want. Like, I think people can like raise their hand or something.
Yeah,
or is that,
yeah.
is that
So there are people who have requested, and I can make their voice live. But if you want me to do it, I'm happy to do it.
Do it.
This is gonna go great.
I want Adam Malamud. I see Adam Malamud, who did Game of Zones, is on. We could have him.
But he didn't. He hasn't requested yet.
He has no question.
All right.
I have 9 people who have requested.
All right. Well, if you do you know them such that you know they won't come on and say like Baba Booey or something like that?
Well, that would be honestly,
We're hoping
considering the way the internet is compared to the way Howard Stern was, it could be a lot worse than just a Baba Booey. I see. There's one that I recognize. I'll go to.
Okay. Why don't you go with he or she? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So hold on.
She might be safer if we have a she.
But... All right. Well, here we have a he. So Rick.
Okay.
Rick is on. Rick, you there, buddy? I guess not.
We love the platform. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, it's
great.
Now everybody's requesting. So let me.
Okay.
Hold on. I'm good.
You have the awesome power. I'll stay. Right. We normally keep these a half hour, but we'll do another 10 minutes of questions.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm gonna add Jason. I know Jason is safe. Jason, are you there? Jason.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
I think you have to press.
We can hear him. No, we can hear him. We can hear him. He's there.
Oh, okay.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Jason.
I do not have a basketball question. I have a music question.
Oh, wow. All right.
As is
for Hugh.
As is my nature. Daryl, I wanted to see if you had any hot takes about the Grammys that just happened, where it was kind of a showdown between Taylor Swift, Dua Lipa, Post Malone, Haim, and a few others. I know Spike has some very hot takes on Taylor Swift and some other major pop artists, but I wanted to get your take.
So I think we could all answer this one. I would say Taylor Swift's album came out when I was in the bubble, so that might have affected it. I don't necessarily like Taylor Swift, but I thought that album was remarkable. I thought it was really good. But I will say, since it sounds like Spike might hate Taylor Swift or something.
No, I just think she's forgettable. That's all.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I liked her song about the house in Rhode Island. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like some Budweiser magnate had this house in Rhode Island or something. And it is a catchy song. And then my friend ruined it. And he said, like, I like the song, but then I realized it's just a book report, and I don't want a book report for a song. She basically does this song reporting on this house in Rhode Island and its history. So that ruined that song. But yeah, I thought her album was remarkable. I don't usually like her stuff, but I thought that one was great. So
Any other any hot Grammy takes?
Jason's gonna get killed. Like, people want to know like who we're trading for, and they're gonna be like, you wait, you asked about Taylor Swift.
Well, he's trying to get me going, I think, too. Adam, you requested Adam Malamut, so he's here. Game of
Oh,
Zones, Adam
nice,
Malamut.
Adam. What's up, man?
Hey
Adam,
everyone.
what's up, man?
Great show. Really enjoying it as a listener. As a speaker, my question is this, and I know these things come up a lot at Sloan. We talk about the rule changes you were talking about before, but my brother had this idea that what if it was 5 periods to 21, like the what's the ending, the All-Star
Yep.
ending that they do, but
The Elam ending.
yeah,
Yep.
the Elam ending. So
Yep.
if the game was 5 periods to 21 and you had to win 3 out of those 5 periods, how would that change strategy? And that's my question.
How would it change strat? I actually think it's a reasonable idea. In fact, the CBA, the old CBA, like the one where George Karl coached years ago, they had rules like these. So they had, you got 1 point for winning a quarter, and you got, I think, 3 for, I forget how it worked, like 3 for winning a game. So you had like different ways to win. Dunks were worth 3, actually. That might be something that Michael would like potentially. They had all these really interesting rules. How would it change strategy? I mean, it would be a little like tennis, right? In that, like, if you got down 18-3 in a quarter, you'd probably just tank. That kind of. I don't know. You're smarter than me. You guys take this one. So
I'm not
I
smarter than
have no
you.
idea.
I do think that there should be more experimentation. I like that they've played around with stuff in the G League where they played around with overtime and see what works.
yeah, one free throw is like should happen tomorrow in the NBA. It's so much better. Everyone will
really?
love that. Oh my
Just
god,
Yeah,
one?
everyone.
Yeah, for a foul.
I agree with that. We're worth 1 point, worth 2 points. What about this is what we talked about on the podcast, but thinning down the lane, which is a relatively over the last couple decades new addition to allow more post touches.
Yeah, I don't see what meaning like make offensive 3 seconds, almost gone essentially
A little
by
bit, yeah.
making the lane tiny.
Mhm.
I've never totally understood the lane. Like it just doesn't like it's just not. It doesn't really. Maybe because like once the 3 point, like there's a lot of rules that like were really important before other rules. So the backcourt 8 second violation. Well, that was important until you had a 24-second shot clock. Like the 8 second rule in the backcourt is like one of the dumbest rules now. Like, well, of course you're not going to stand in the backcourt. You have to shoot it in 20 seconds. Like it's an irrelevant rule basically. It's like the appendix of rules. Now with a spaced floor like we have now, I mean, no one like I don't even think we need the paint necessarily. We need it for defensive 3 seconds more than offensive.
Wasn't there a play in last night's game that I think it was Dwight that contested a shot and he went pretty much straight up, and I think it might have been Chris Middleton that sort of flailed his body into him. Like that's a play that could be removed from the game. That Chris Middleton is not trying to shoot with his right shoulder dipping down into Dwight's crotch and think that that's good. That's a real thing. Like it just feels like to me, refereeing is a very subjective thing because
Right.
there's so much fluidity to the game.
Right. It's an extremely hard sport to ref, obviously.
For sure.
I hate the block charge and the perimeter screening rules are basically different every night and extremely hard to call. And yeah, and the drive in contact that happens. I mean, look, it's like there's real. I promise you, every easy solution, and the NBA does work hard on this. There are very good reasons why they haven't done it because as soon as you pass some rule, like people like me, idiots like me, are going to try to manipulate it the other way. Where like one defensive strategy we've come up with, given how they're calling it now, is just always have your head out and just try and get hit because they'll call an offensive foul anytime your head gets hit. So you should just run, sticking your head out everywhere because getting a turnover is massive. So like we've like literally like should we just tell our players to just stick their head out constantly so they can get hit and get an offensive foul? Yeah, it's you have to really structure these rules carefully, or people are gonna immediately try and counter them. So
you should be banned from the league.
I should no, believe me, believe me. This has been discussed. This has been discussed.
Do you think they can ever get rid of refs and have vision AI technology get so good in like 20 or 30 years where it's just there's no more subjectivity? Like an algorithm knows if you were charging or blocking or moving your screen or any 100% reliability. What would that do to the game? It'd be like
the league
line
is looking at that
in tennis. The line calls that were controversial at first, but then we got to where we trust the machine and not the people.
Yeah, over time, that's the direction. Like goaltending could be called automated. We're tracking the ball in 3 dimensions in real time, so that could be called automated. There's a lot of things that be called automated. Out of bounds calls are hilarious in the NBA. They've tracked the data very carefully, and any sort of contested out of bounds play, you know what percentage of the time the refs get it correct? I'll let you guys guess. 50%. It's literally utterly random.
Yeah.
So yeah, my solution on that is literally just I would go to a college possession arrow, and just every out of bounds it's a bang bang play where it's non-obvious, they just possession arrow it, and that would force basically what used to happen, which is the refs would sort of try to even it out over the course of the game.
Well, a lot of the times the refs like a foul that's occurring, but instead of calling a foul, you just give the ball back to the team that was fouled. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, and then they go to replay, and they're like, "Oh crap, whoops."
Yeah, it's out on the wrong guy. We call it a possession instead of a foul. What do we do now?
Right.
The most confusing thing to me, as far as the most confusing thing to me as far as reffing goes, is why jump balls have to actually be a jump ball. Like the idea that basketball is just like, well, who can jump highest? Here we go. It's like the most.
It's dumb.
It is the like most first thought 1904 way to determine who should get the ball. If like Shake and Rudy Gobert got a tie up, then it's like, well, I think we know who's going to get it, but that doesn't make a difference as far as like it just feels like it defaults to why not have like a run fast competition?
Well, yeah,
we waste a race to who can ever get the ball.
8 hours on it. They position around the thing, and Joey Crawford has to yell at the guy to keep his feet in a certain spot, and we waste like 2 minutes trying to throw the ball up, and then the ref, because it's a really hard thing to do, can't even throw it straight up anyway, and is worried about getting killed. And so it should just be a possession error. Like college has that one right for sure,
or at least like a do or die, like 3-pointer,
a duel. A duel
is good too. I like that.
I just let them keep fighting for the ball. Don't just like blow a whistle as soon as 4 hands are on the ball. Like give them a good 10 to 15 seconds to 8
rugby style.
Or we could do what they actually do in college practices. I believe it's like in the NBA, no one would do this because it's insane. They literally have people start at each baseline, put the ball in the middle of the floor, and then whoever emerges with the ball gets it.
I want that.
Yeah, dodgeball rules.
Literally, I think you get 1 injury every 5 minutes if you do that. So
let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, look, if the NBA is trying to get more like the NFL, that would definitely help concussion-wise. I think that would improve in that level.
For sure, absolutely. Well, we should take one more question, maybe from the peanut gallery.
Let me see if I can find.
Are you on the board of Twitter, Daryl? Is this what's happening here?
I'm angry. I'm not on the board of Twitter. I wish I was. I know people who invested in Twitter and Uber at Benchmark, and they pretend to be my friend, but I don't have any shares. It's really annoying to me at this point.
I know John, so I know John is safe.
You just hate Twitter because they're at this point they're trolling you, obviously. Like it's like part of at this point you should just want to not be verified, right? Mike,
it's a healthy disdain between Twitter and myself. We spend a lot of time with each other.
If that is actually you, Mike, if we can be sure.
We can't be sure. We can't be sure.
John what's your question? You're live.
Sure. Yeah. Hi. Hi, everybody. Hi, Daryl. Thanks for doing
What's up,
this.
John?
I'm curious, Daryl. I haven't seen a lot of reporting on, the impact of revenues this past year impacting teams' decision makings. Either, non-contenders being a little more, willing or acting more urgently to shed salary, or contenders being a little more hesitant to load up and pay more for, a team, for a playoff run that might not bring the sort of, you know return that it would in other years. I'm curious, if around the league you have the sense that that's impacting, what teams are doing, both sort of around the deadline and sort of moving forward into the summer.
I would say the reason you don't see articles is because it's been a non-issue, and the reason is really to give credit to the NBA players unit and the commissioner. They've got this sort of nice system where everyone really does share 50-50 and everything is scaled down. So like, yeah, behind the scenes, there's less revenue and less money going to players, but it doesn't change our decision making because everything's based on the margin, right? So it really, to the credit of the league, like it hasn't really shifted. We obviously know that business isn't as good and things like that, and it's affecting things in many ways, but it hasn't. I haven't talked to any of the GMs who say like our decision making is different. We're still just all trying to win the title, so, or whatever, get a high draft pick, whatever phase you're in. So,
Well, Hugh and Daryl, thanks.
yeah, that was fun.
He gave away. We did a whole podcast and we just gave it to Twitter, but it was for you and it was for Hugh. So it's.
Well, this is sort of Hugh and my thing that you were trying to steal. That's how I think about it.
That's fair.
Wait a minute. It was your idea. You said it. You were.
Well, that's what I think. Like Hugh and I have been doing this every week. If you were tuning into our Woolly Mammoth show last week, you would know this. But because we only had 3 people interested in woolly mammoths, no fault. But yeah,
we got tricked into doing a radio show with callers, and then also we're hosting, which is a wild trickery to do. I think that's how Daryl, you made a career out of fooling people into making bad trades, and we are the recipient. We just got fooled. Here we go.
We try to do it different. I did like your take though, Mike, where you were like, "Why do we need new ways to talk? Haven't we been doing this for a while?" Like we don't. Yeah. But apparently,
we're still waiting on Sam Hinkie to solve that email. Any day now, he's solving it.
You guys should do our show
Sam is
every week. This is so much.
Sam is definitely. Go ahead, Hugh. Sorry.
I was just saying they should do our show for us every week. This is so much less work for us.
Okay.
Oh.
We do enough shows. I'll tell you
we'll
that.
Sponsor the book, the new TV show coming out, Wool and Beacon 23. We'll sponsor the new Spike and Mike podcast.
Sure.
So the space cast. Sam, by the way, is definitely solving everything. Like he's investing in so many things with his 87 capital, I think. So, of which someday I hopefully will be a billionaire with my tiny investment in that. So we shall see. So
thanks for having us.
Good luck with your money with Sam.
Yeah, thanks. That was fun.
We'll have you back on our turf for a real one, and then the hard questions will come.
Yeah, we held off on the hard one.
Sounds so I've already been. I mean, I feel like I've already been on your. Do people do it more than once? I thought it was just like a one-time thing.
Well, you came before in a different role. You came as sort of like a flirting, sort of we might be working together situation.
You were working for the Rockets.
Do you know why? You know why I did it? I love Andrew Yang, and you had Andrew Yang, and I was like, "Oh, that was fun." So that was why I did it. Yeah. So
well, Andrew Yang didn't become GM of the Sixers, so that's why we're not talking to him again.
He became mayor of New York, apparently. Maybe, I don't know. So yeah, you guys are kingmakers. That's what it is.
Yeah, for sure. Congrats.
All right, see you guys. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
Bye.